Hello there, welcome to episode 93 of Never Mind the Bullens. It's your bite-sized Everton podcast and vodcast. I'm Mike Peters. Games coming thick and fast for the Blues at the moment, although we're now on the cusp of a 2-week international break. And after the elation and exhilaration of Thursday night's exertions against Newcastle, the Everton roller coaster that is the 21-22 season continued with one of its plateaus against Palace in the FA Cup quarter-final on Sunday. Now, let's put a bit of context here and say, well, really, it was a sort of a shot-to-nothing game, a game really that doesn't impact us in our plans for the season, other than it stops us winning a trophy again. So that is now literally 27 years that we, despite what the protest said, even though we had a chance of winning the FA Cup this year, it will be 27 or 28 years at least since we last won a trophy before we have a chance to win another one, given the competitions for 2023, and it's just not acceptable. We know that, but I think any of the 3,900 that went down there, or those thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of us maybe watching on television yesterday, would have been going in there with a fair sense of caution, of sort of trepidation ahead of that game. And I think that was probably, in the end, obviously pretty well placed and pretty well judged, because although we started the game well, as soon as Andros Townsend went off after 15 minutes and there was that stoppage, and what a disappointment for him, although it was lovely to see the warm applause and the ovation he got from all four sides of Selhurst Park yesterday. That's a blow. Hopefully he won't be out for too long, but it does look like he might really have done himself a mischief with his ankle there when he went over on it. Such an innocuous sort of incident as well, and a player that has bucked the trend certainly in terms of commitment and effort and desire this season against some of his fellow squad members. I'm sure they could do a lot to sort of look at his example in terms of how to play a game of football. Yeah, quality hasn't necessarily always been there from him at times this season. He dipped below the sort of the levels he set himself at the very start of the season, where he was scoring cracking goals left, right and centre, and it was a real threat. In terms of his effort, levels have never dropped. So hopefully, he can have a galvanising effect on the people around him, the rest of the squad, who obviously need to book their ideas up. But after that, we we lost our way. Never really looked like winning the game. And I texted my brother as soon as the second goal went in, and just went, game over. And I think all of us knew that there was no chance of us getting back into it. Palace are a good team, certainly a better team than we've seen from them in years past, where they've been a very functional, sort of solid team who were always going to just sort of stay in the Premier League. But they're now starting to push on and push towards being a top half team. May well win themselves a trophy, and I hope they do. There's certainly a preference against anybody else that's in this. The other three teams that are in the semi-finals, who is the sort of the top three of the Premier League as it stands at the moment. It'd be lovely to see a different name on the cup as well. But while it was a game that doesn't necessarily affect us, other than adding to that sort of disappointing and horrible sort of record of having not won a trophy for that long, again, it just showed, pair again to the watching millions, the problems that Everton have got. And Frank Lampard has played a blinder here, because he's come out and he's done exactly what I've said Everton managers have needed to do in the past, and he's been honest. He's been honest with us as fans. He's been honest with the players. And with us as fans, we've always appreciated honesty. That's why Roberto Martinez fell over, because we could see through the haze of nonsense that he was coming out with. And other managers subsequent to that as well, just going, you're talking nonsense. It's not what we're watching on the pitch on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. Frank Lampard's come out and very brutally, bluntly said to the players, if you're, it's all very well not being quite good enough, but if you've got to say, right, well, if I'm not necessarily got the skills for this, have I got the balls for this? Have you got the bollocks for this, to use his words accurately? And he's absolutely right. But all he's doing is articulating what we as fans have been saying for quite some time, is that, and I said it 2 episodes ago after the Wolves game, where you're looking at players and they just go hiding. When the going gets tough, they get going. And there's too many of them now that they just gave up. The defending for the first goal was lousy. not necessarily from Michael Keane, Holgate, Ben Godfrey, but from the sort of crux of players in front of them, the clutch of players in front of them, who didn't mark Gay at all, and just let them run off him, and he gets a header in, completely unmarked. The second goal, Ben Godfrey's been sucked out to Seamus Coleman. Abdoulaye Doucouré just can't be bothered to track the run, and then he's got an absolute acre of space, and hey presto, it's 2-0, and the game is pretty much done and dusted. Then the third and fourth goals are just, again, pretty poor defending in terms of reacting to things. And that's what you want to see, a reaction from players. There is nobody going, come on. You just don't see it. There's just, when things are down, we can get it back into this and trying to book each other up. There's none of that. And it just, again, shows the fault lines within the squad and where the clear problems are. And it's certainly defensively and in midfield. And I look at that starting 11 yesterday and go, right, how many of them do I want to see on the pitch at Goodison next season? And I'm thinking, well, realistically, it's Jordan Pickford, it's Ben Godfrey, Abdoulaye Doucouré at the moment is there's a question mark over him, Anthony Gordon, Richarlison, and I'd probably happily keep Andros Townsend. But other than that, you're going to yourself, well, the rest of them, I can quite happily get shut off. John Joe Kenny, Seamus Coleman, Michael Keane, Mason Holgate, Andre Gomez. They can go. They can just get shut of them. And that's 6 of your first team that I've just mentioned that you can all say, right, don't want them. And that's a huge, huge amount of surgery that needs to be done to this squad in the summer. We knew this anyway, but it was laid bare for us there, and those people that have got on coach at 4:00 in the morning to go and watch that have been really sort of shortchanged in every conceivable way, and not for the first time. But yet we will continue to do it. They'll be there in fine voice against West Ham in a fortnight's time, and again at Goodison against Manchester United 3 weeks from now. But what I find interesting is the sort of the symmetry between, we cast our mind back 20 years to when we lost to Middlesbrough in the FA Cup quarter-final. And that was a watershed for Walter Smith. He was sacked. David Moyes came in. New era. March of 2013, we lose 3-0 at home in the quarter-final to Wigan. And you felt that was a watershed for that squad. David Moyes leaves at the end of that season. Phil Neville, etc. There were players that were moved on, and we had to then change and progress forward. And then fast forward, 9 years, so let's say we've had one every decade, and it's a watershed, not for the manager, obviously, because he's only been there 5 minutes, but a watershed certainly for some of those players. And you think, Michael Keane's been there 5 years now, Mason Holgate's been there from the Roberto Martinez era, Seamus Coleman obviously goes back even further, John Joe Kenny's been there a number of years, Andre Gomez has been there 4 seasons, and you're looking, you said, right, it's those players from those eras that were desperately unsuccessful and desperately underwhelming that need to be moved out. And it's immensely disappointing, but really completely expected. I think any of us that were watching that game yesterday would have gone into it and thought to ourselves, right, this is... expectations are low, expect nothing, you can't be disappointed. Expect the worst and hope for the best. But nonetheless, despite your expectations being low, you still hope for the best. We're Evertonians. Hope springs eternal. And yet again, it's another punch in the guts. And just thinking, if we played really well and really given a good account of ourselves and lost by 2-1, you'd have gone, all right, hey, that's cup football. That's the way it is. But to just surrender so meekly, it's just so disappointing, but so predictable, because we've seen it happen so many times before in the recent past. And we're just thinking, when is it going to drop? When is that penny going to drop with these players? And you're just thinking, it's not. It's never going to drop. So, I personally wouldn't have brought on Damari Gray either after 15 minutes. I know he's been excellent, but he's gone off the boil lately. I know he's had an injury, and obviously that's affected him. But I personally would actually brought on Alex Iwobi to put some energy into it. But we've got a long look at Scott. I think Frank Lampard will do that. Obviously, look at what is the best way for us to set up going forward toward the end of this season, and certainly going into next season. And see, right, what is the best way for me to incorporate, the players that you do want to keep if we can keep them, of course, the Calvert-Lewins, Richarlisons, Anthony Gordon, so on and so forth, into that and incorporate. Say, right, okay, how can we now give ourselves a more a solid base to for this team to enable those attacking players to flourish? Now we've signed Nathan Patterson, we've signed Vitaly Mikolenko, so two of those cogs are there, providing those players can step up. But again, Nathan Patterson, we haven't seen him yet in a league game. He's obviously played against Boreham Wood, was taken off. Are these players that we need? We certainly need centre-halves, we certainly need defensive midfielders, solidity to that team. Is Donny van der Beek a player that is going to be able to incorporate into that? Who knows? Obviously, Dele Alli will be incorporated into that in some way. So it's about finding a solid base to build from. And at the moment, we don't have that. The entire... Well, the club, realistically, is built on foundations of sand. So there's an enormous amount of soul searching, and obviously I know the players aren't going away over the course of the next couple of weeks, but they need to have a very, very long look at themselves as we head into this final stretch of the season, because what we have now, having had a cup quarter-final on Sunday, is another 10, 11 cup finals in order to maintain our Premier League status. The result on Friday against Wolves, as I mentioned in the for Leeds against Wolves, obviously a bit of a blow. Can't legislate for that, but we are in control of our own destiny. If we get enough points, if we can win 5 matches, win those home games, and get some maybe eking a couple of results out away from home, get a couple of points here and there, that should see us safe. But the players have to perform with much more fight and heart and desire than we have seen for the vast majority of this season. We've seen it at points. We saw it against City. We saw it against Leeds. To an extent, we saw it against Aston Villa. We sort of saw it for a little while on Thursday against Newcastle, but they've got to start to put that together now for 90 minutes. And you can't, as Frank Lampard said, you can't play at 70%, certainly against teams that are going for Europe and all the rest of it. So he's got 2 weeks to try and work with these and try and work on their mental strength and try and inject some confidence into them in some way, show them what they can do best, because we know that if we can get a goal and get ahead in games, it just allows that confidence to build and allows us to relax on the ball. And that is going to be so important to be getting the first goal against in some of these games coming up, which are going to be 6-pointers, really. And we have to do that. So there's always next season in the Cup, isn't there? As there always is. And next season, hopefully, we can finally end that hoodoo of not having won a trophy for such a long time. On the upside, it does save me having any difficult conversations with the other half about going to Wembley over the Easter weekend. And saves us all a lot of cash, doesn't it, in terms of going down there for a more inevitable disappointment. But then, that's just a classic Evertonian humour, I suppose, in a way. Until the next time, it'd be great to hear from you at NMTVPod on Twitter, nmtvpod@gmail.com. This has been a Top Content production. Come on, you Blues.